We're going to start talking about the legislative branch, and that's Article 1 of the Constitution. Our legislative branch in the United States is called Congress. Once again, it is Article 1. And if you'll remember, we've talked about this before, that the Founding Fathers felt that this was the most important branch. And the reason that we know that is because they put it first in the Constitution, and it is by far the longest of all the three articles about the branches of government. We've got several constitutional amendments that deal specifically with Congress. The first one is the 17th Amendment. Senators were originally chosen by the state's legislature. With the 17th Amendment, the state legislature no longer picks them, but now the people in their state choose them, just like we do members of the House of Representatives. The Senate was originally intended to represent the interests of the state. The House of Representatives is to represent the interests of the people from each state, but the Senate was to represent the state's interest. But a lot of people didn't like that, and because of the 17th Amendment, that's no longer the case. The people from the state elect both the senators and the members of the House of Representatives. 20th Amendment is also known as the Lame Duck Amendment, and what that did was that changed the start date of Congress and also presidential inauguration from March back to January. And I want you to think about this. We're going to talk about when elections take place. The election for president and Congress is done in November. And so what you had was situations where someone who was running or was currently in office would lose an election. And when they lost an election, they would hold that seat and be able to vote and have power for the rest of November, December, January, February, and then part of March. And so that was an awful long time for a person who was still holding that seat but has not been reelected to stay in power. And that's what a lame duck is. A lame duck candidate is one who is currently holding that position in either the House or Senate or even as a president, but won't be when the next term starts. Right now, Barack Obama is a lame duck president. He can't run again. So there really are no consequences for him trying to push through things that the people aren't happy with because there's no consequence in terms of elections. So the 20th Amendment changes that date and pushed it back to January. So the election takes place in November, and then we have the new start dates in January as opposed to March. And the 27th Amendment, we've talked about this one before. It was one that was originally part of the Bill of Rights, one of the 12 amendments that was submitted to the states but was not ratified during that period of time. And what it says is that congressional pay raises don't go into effect until after an election. Okay, we have a bicameral legislature. This is review. It's made up of two houses, and that was because of the Great Compromise, and we know that's the House and the Senate. Each Congress is numbered. They started with the first Congress, and now we are currently in the 113th Congress, and it started on January 3rd, 2013. We will have elections this November, and then January 3rd of 2015 we'll have the 114th Congress start. So they are numbered consecutively. We are in the 113th. A term of Congress lasts for 2 years, and the reason it lasts for 2 years is because House members serve for 2 years, so we have to have elections every 2 years. So a term is 2 years, and it has 2 sessions. They are required to meet for some period of time during each one of those years. Talking specifically about the House of Representatives, we know that in the House of Representatives, representation is based on population. That was part of the Great Compromise. There are currently 435 members in the House of Representatives. In the first Congress, there were only 65 members, and that number has grown as the population has increased. Each state is guaranteed at least one member in the House, and we do have 7 states that only do have one member in the House of Representatives, and that's because of their population. Even though Alaska is the largest geographically, no one lives there, and so they only have one member in the House of Representatives. If you look at Wyoming and North Dakota and South Dakota and states like that, where the population is small relative to the rest of the country, they only have one representative. Indiana currently has 9 members in the House of Representatives, and we live in the 2nd District, and Jackie Walorski, and she is a Republican, is our congresswoman, and she represents us in the House of Representatives. House members serve for 2 years, just said that. And the reason that they do this, that they serve only 2 years and that they represent not the whole entire state, but just a small section of each state, is because they wanted the members of the House of Representatives not only to be chosen by the people, but to be closer to their constituents. And a constituent is a person who is being represented. And so they're going to be more in tuned since they only serve for 2 years. They have to be mindful of what they're doing because they know as soon as they're elected, they almost have to start running for re-election again. The other thing about the House is that this is where taxing bills have to originate and where spending bills have to originate. And so they do that because this group of people is closer to their constituents. So anything that deals with taxing and spending is going to have to start there. There are currently no term limits. You have had some states that have tried to create term limits, and this has been challenged. It's gone all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has said because in the Constitution it only gives 3 requirements and it does not establish any term limits, then the states can't do that either. And the 3 constitutional requirements to be a member of the House: you have to be 25 years old, a citizen for 7 years, and you have to live in the state that you are running for office. It is not a requirement to live in the district, but you must live in the state. But obviously, if you don't live in the district, your odds are going to be slim of being elected. Reapportionment. This applies just to the House of Representatives. We have to know where people are living and where they're moving so that we can determine how many seats a state is going to get. So if you have a state that's losing population, then they shouldn't have as many representatives as those states that are gaining representation. So we take a census every 10 years, and it's called the decennial census. And its primary purpose is to count everyone who lives in the United States and to figure out how we are going to redistribute the 435 seats in the House of Representatives. In 1910, that is when the number 435 was reached. When 1920 comes around, they don't do anything. We have the census, but they decide not to change that number or reapportion. 1929 comes around and they realize that they're going to have this same problem again in 1930, and they know 535 is a lot of people, and that's their problem. We don't want to continue to add more and more and more people because at some point you have so many people we're never going to get any work done. So in 1929, Congress wrote the Reapportionment Act of 1929, and what it did was set the permanent size of the House of Representatives at 435 members. And what happens is after the census is taken, the Census Bureau will tell the states how many seats they will get in the House of Representatives. And then it's the responsibility of each state to take those numbers and to redraw the district maps based on where the population is shifting. This is the state of Louisiana, and that in yellow is a district. And this is an illegal district. And what this is called, excuse me, is gerrymandering. What has to happen when we draw the districts is that every district must have the same amount of population. What they're supposed to also keep in mind is not just population, but it's supposed to be as compact as it can be. And it also should all be contained within one border. You shouldn't have part of a district over here, District 4 here, and then District 4 over here. So this is continuous, but it's definitely not compact, but it should be the same as all of these other ones. What this is called is gerrymandering. And what gerrymandering is when you draw districts in odd shapes so that the party in power can either gain more seats or maintain the amount of control that they already have. So it's the state's responsibility for drawing these district lines. The case Westbury versus Sanders says that every district must have the same population. You want everyone's vote carrying the same weight. You don't want one district that has twice as many people because then everyone in their district's vote counts as half as anyone else's in the state. And once again, gerrymandering, when they draw these districts in very odd shapes, and we'll do some stuff with this in class, so if you don't understand it, don't worry about it too much. So two things they can do when they gerrymander is they can concentrate a party in one district. So what we'll do is we'll let the Republicans take this district and the Democrats can carry the rest of them, or they can split a district up so thin that it can't actually win any seats. Special duties in the House of Representatives. They are responsible for impeaching the president. And impeachment just means to formally charge with a crime. They just look to see, is there enough evidence to actually have a trial? And there have been two presidents who have been impeached, Andrew Johnson, and that was over Reconstruction after the Civil War, and Bill Clinton for lying under oath. The other thing, and I talked about this a little bit ago, all revenue-raising or tax bills have to start in the House of Representatives. All appropriations bills, if they're going to tax and they're going to spend, it's got to start in the House of Representatives.